Hi, everyone. This is Debbie, and welcome to the Transition Bridge podcast. This is the podcast where we come together each and every week to discover more about the purpose and the power of life's transitions. And if you find yourself maybe in a season of transition and you're wanting more clarity on your next steps, how do I move forward? I'm feeling frustrated. I'm struggling. Well, remember that I'm also your life transition coach, so you can connect with me. Check with my Calendly link below. Let's just have a free consultation together because I want to hear your story. Now, I have a question. You may be in another season of transition in leadership. So, if you are in leadership and you're wanting to transition to a new season of freedom, freedom in your business and from your business, today's episode is for you. My expert guest today is Michael Walsh, and he is a visionary leader, speaker, and author. And he is known for igniting passion in the business owners and the senior leaders that he works with by helping them drive their established businesses to a growth level that's beyond their expectations. He has also supported hundreds of company owners in their quest for business growth and three core freedoms in their business, from their business, and because of their business. Well, Michael, welcome to the Transition Bridge podcast. It's great to have you.
Well, thank you, and thanks for having me here.
Of course, I know we're going to have a really great conversation. And so I know that you're an expert at scaling businesses and designing them to run smoothly. But what I'm also fascinated about is the work that you do, not only in just transitioning the companies, but how you transition the leaders themselves. So let's start there. In a leader's journey, when is it that they begin to realize that maybe freedom is a priority? And do you have a story of yourself when maybe that question came into your own life?
Well, that's a big question.
It sure
The
is.
the okay, so here's here's what I believe about that. A business can only grow as much as the people themselves grow.
True.
So every single step of the way is a transition to a different level for people, and each
Mhm.
of those can actually, if people are interested in growing, what I find is that freedom actually expands when that happens. It's when people try to fight life or think it should be like more of the same or the same things that they already
Mhm.
know. That's when they tend to get stuck. Um,
Yes.
so when you talk about transitions, I mean, the only days that there are transitions are any day that ends in a Y. Other than that, there's no transitions going on. Constantly we have them.
We do. Well, I always say our lives are a story of transition. We're closing one chapter and opening another. So, of course, that would happen in business as well. You
Mhm.
have to have growth. You have to get to the next level and not only take yourself, but the people who work with you. So that's why it's so paramount for that leader to experience growth.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I find, there are as many ways to grow a business as there are people. We all have different interests. We all have different top strengths. We all have different passions. We all have different ideas.
Hmm.
So every single business would comes out a little differently. So if I go into a business myself, which I have one, things would go a particular way. You have a business, your business would go a particular way. If you and I partnered, it would go a third way because it would be a combination of our respective strengths combined, as well as whatever the weak spots are that we both leave behind collectively. So it's interesting because every step we take sort of changes things, and people think that there's a right way to grow a business. What I find is if you allow people to be themselves and grow into wherever they are, there's lots that can happen. Now, that said, um, the problems are all very similar.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I find about entrepreneurs, we find about a lot of people, but I can only speak to entrepreneurs because that's who I deal with. But I find that entrepreneurs are pretty savvy people. If we can see a problem, we can deal with the problem. We can figure it out. If we can't see a problem, but we know it exists, usually we can figure it out. Now, sometimes a little harder than the ones we can clearly see, but that's fine. We still find a way. The problems that get us are the ones that we can't see and we have no idea they exist even while we're stuck in their grips. And those are the problems that actually cause us a little bit of turmoil. And so when you talk about transitions, quite often it's transitions through those times, and I actually mark those times with each of the different milestones of business growth. Those are the times when it takes rethinking who we are, not just what we're about, because a business will only grow as much as people grow themselves. So,
Absolutely.
that's my observation about that.
No, it's so true because some people think grow the business, but if the person's not transitioning internally, I always tell people transitions are also internal as well as external. And the new seasons or directions do a work inside of us that make us stronger, just better at whatever it is that we're doing. And we have to embrace them or we're never transformed by them. So, what do you find some of the struggles are? So the people, I find that interesting. They know there's a problem, but they can't see it. So they're blindsided by it. Do these people have you found these type of leaders don't listen to maybe the others who are trying to tell them what the problem is? Is there a resistance?
Well, the problem is quite often when none of us can see. But the other side of it is that everybody goes through these things. Like, if you think of it, we all know that children grow, and the pants that I have on my 3-year-old are going to be very different than the pants I have on my 13-year-old and they'll be very different again than the pants I have on my 23-year-old. Okay? Well, as a business passes through 1 million in revenues, it's one size. But you know what? That business has very little to do. If you look at a business at 1 million, the same business at 5 million, and the same business at 10 million, assuming that it grows that large,
Mhm.
if you look, what is it that those three businesses, the same business at those three levels, what is it that they share? Well, first of all, they may have the same product, although even that sometimes can evolve as a business grows. They usually have the same value set if you've got the same owners. Okay, if you don't have the same owners, even the value set will change, but let's assume you have the same owners and you have a few of the same key people. Not many, because at 1 million, I don't need that many people. And at 10 million, I need a lot more people than I need at 1 million. So there's not even, everything else is up for grabs,
Mhm.
and I love when you talk about transitions, because um, people really think, here's one of the things that I hear a lot. Okay. People come and people go. You know what? You want to have a powerful business, you need to focus on your systems. It's all about your systems, and then make sure that
Mhm.
your people conform to your systems. And it's like, that's just not true.
I agree.
Like, think about it. $1 million in revenue, 5 million in revenue, 10 million. Do you really think those three companies are using the same systems and structures? They blow through the systems and structures just as fast as they grow their people. I mean, everything's up for grabs. Nothing stays the same. Again, when I look at my 3-year-old, my 13-year-old, and my 23-year-old, the same person at three ages, at 13, I'm dealing with the troubles of an adolescent working through the vagaries of puberty. At 3, I'm just trying to make sure the right stuff goes in their mouth, their vegetables, and the wrong stuff stays out of their mouth, the sand in the sandbox. And at 23, it's a whole different game. We don't even want to go there, right? So, and we know that. And, the question I look at is, what is it that we do to survive being a parent of these children at different ages? Because it's not like we come with a manual. We can
That's
watch what our
true.
parents did, but I got to tell you, as times change, do you really
Mhm.
think that a baby boomer thinks the same as a Gen Z?
Oh
I mean,
no.
they're a little different, right? And of course, every
Absolutely.
generation claims the next one is worse. Well, yeah, but everybody has always done that. What you've got is brilliant young people emerging, but they've got their own thoughts and ideas about things. So it's the question that you look at is what really does have parents survive it? And quite often, what it is, it's the relationship that's been developed with that child
Mhm.
over time. You're still learning things as you go, but it's the relationships that develop. Well, it's the same in a business. It's the relationships that build. And one of the mistakes people make is they really believe that I have to go to the structures. And the reason they go to the structures in their business is because there's this illusion of control.
Yes.
Okay, so as I outgrow this structure, I'll put another one in to try to get them to do what I want them to do, rather than actually saying, I just blew through that structure. Now, what are other structures I could do to support my people to be at their best? That
Hmm.
takes a very different level of thinking, and you have to move past the core survival need that we have to trust that, you know what, we can figure this out. And you know what, I really do have good people. And given that I have good people, let's see if we can sort something out together. And,
Hmm.
when you talk about transition, when we're confronted with all the problems that happen at the different milestones of growth,
Hmm.
it takes a whole different level of maturity in business to accomplish those things. And, what I find is after somebody hits their first million, you know what? At 2 million, they run into one set. At 5 million, they run into the next set. As you're approaching 10 million, another set, and there's this chasm between 12 and 20 million. And it's all based on a combination of outstripping structures and a larger number of people. When you've got more people, it's like herding cats. And if I try to control people, which is what people tend to do when we're threatened, okay, that's when I run into problems. And that's when the business ties me to it. If I
Yes.
can work with people, we've all worked on teams where like everything flowed smoothly. We had really cool people on that team, and everybody knew their part and it just kind of worked. Well, it just didn't fall from the sky. You can actually design those things. Yet we're so inundated with the problems and issues and changing environment that we don't realize that actually if we take a step back and we design things, we can actually design things to support our people with each other and with us and ourselves in our support of people, but also ourselves in support of the clientele we have, support of the vendors that we use in the community, all that kind of stuff. Now, that's while it sounds utopian, and it really does. When I'm saying it myself, it's like, wow, that sounds utopian. But the truth is, it's just how it works when it
Yes.
does.
Well, it's collaboration. As you were just saying, when you collaborate with others, you get a plethora of ideas that maybe you would not have thought of. Someone else comes and just makes the system better. It makes it
Mhm.
stronger. Then you feel like a team and you really feel like collectively you have produced something great. And so, okay, so I know, control is a big thing, especially in certain types of leaders. How do you help them let go of control while still maintaining a confidence in their business? Because when you start losing control, it just brings out a lot of emotions that are not good for yourself or for your employees. And then maybe their confidence is being compromised. How do you help them with that?
Well, I think the first thing is to acknowledge what it is to be human. And we have a whole bunch of different emotions and a whole bunch of different biological drivers and all that stuff. But I pick on four.
Okay.
We all have the biological need to survive.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, Definitely better than the alternative. Okay. And here's the thing. And
Agree.
we also have the innate desire to thrive. So I've got survival based behavior and thriving. They happen concurrently, but I don't need to get all my survival needs for life handled before I can thrive with anything. Otherwise, why would a 5-year-old ever share a toy? Right? So it's only when we're threatened that survival will jump out there. And, we actually think that we're logical. Humans are logical, don't you know? No, we're not. We're emotional. And you know what? That's not a design flaw of humanity. That's a feature of humanity. Because guess what? Emotion runs faster than logic. There's a bus coming at me. What are the pros and cons? Oops. Okay. I see a bus. Eek! I get out of the way. Life is good. I've lived to go. You know what? Emotions are very quick. They keep us alive. That's a good thing. Also, the emotions of love. And I mean, there's so many different emotions that are there. But the bottom line is the survival emotions are there to
Mhm.
keep us alive. That's there. Now,
Yes.
if we're not in a survival state, see, if I know that everybody's got that innate need
Hmm.
for survival, then it's just part of the human condition and it's fine. It's part of who we are. Okay. I need glasses. You're wearing glasses as well. You know what? My hair is a little shorter than yours, but that's something that the barber can help me out with. But my shade is a little bit lighter than many people. Well, that's just a condition of life at this stage of life. I mean, whatever. You take it or you
Right.
don't, right? But the bottom line, and so is survival. If you know that people have that survival instinct, and you allow for that being part of who they are. You don't freak out if they get upset. You actually say, well, how do I set, people talk, well, we have to have psychological safety. Well, it sounds like great buzzwords. How about just make sure people aren't afraid that someone's going to steal their idea? How about set it up so that people get credit for what they do and put
Mm.
systems together where people can actually work together and have a little bit of fun with it? Because if survival's not at stake, thriving comes right out. Survival's about us and protecting ourselves. Thriving's about others. And if we can actually relax on the surviving thing, you know what? We're like the 5-year-old that is happy to share the toy. We're not worried about whether we have enough for us. And people actually, when they are working collaboratively, and you see this a lot in technology, when you have techies working together, they're sharing ideas back and forth and stuff. It's one of the
Yes.
areas where it's just fascinating to watch. You either get stone silence or you get a lot of buzz. And it depends on what time of day and whether the headphones are on or off. And I mean, they have sessions of both. I mean, I've, seen enough with technology companies, but it's fascinating to watch. And when there's brainstorming and it's always the loudest voices that get heard. It's very different than if everybody has 2 or 3 minutes to write down an idea. And then what happens is everybody's had a chance to put it down. So it's not just the person that thinks the loudest or the quickest that actually has the floor. Everybody gets the floor. Little things like that make a big difference as to whether everybody really feels seen and heard and understood and appreciated for who they are. And frankly, as humans, that's just one of the things we want and need, you know?
Oh, that's a basic human need.
It
We
is.
we all so I have my book back here, The Family Letter, and it's all based on what you just said. I believe we all have a longing in our hearts to be known, loved, valued, and celebrated. And that's just in
Absolutely.
everyday life and in your leadership wherever you're working. And yeah, boy, if you just know that whatever you come up with, whatever idea you bring forth is going to be validated and protected, don't you think you're going to want to generate more and share more there? And I think that's just so special. I think that's really important because people will shrink back. And I love the silence in the collaboration because I believe that's where the creativity comes. Some
Absolutely.
people are slower to think, but they're creative. They're creative. They're thinking out of the box. They're not coming up with that fast answer. They're outside that box. And I think that's very valuable to recognize in your employee.
Absolutely. Now, the other two emotions that we play with, okay, so we've got survive and thrive. The next one would be to connect. We all
Yeah.
have both a need and a desire to connect because we
Hmm.
just inherently know that together we're actually stronger.
Right.
Okay. And we also have the ability to adapt to a changing environment, even if we don't like the changes. There's a survival instinct at stake, but there's also a thriving thing that's going on there. So if we look at survive, thrive, connect, and adapt, you know what? I don't need to be a psychologist to be a business owner. I just need to understand these 4 different elements of human behavior because they handle about 80 or 90% of the issues that we face. And if I create an environment where people can connect when they're not in survival and we work together to adapt to a changing environment, we get all hands on deck. Everybody's actually ready to work with each other. Now, the other side of it is, you know, as a society where we still have somewhat of a hangover from the industrial age. Okay.
Okay.
If you take a look at power and management over the centuries, if you look, we always think of things in terms of our lifespan, but if you go back over a few centuries, the traditional notion that we have right now of management is not the way it usually was. It's not the way it had been before the Industrial Revolution. The power was always gained with wealth, and the wealth was associated with land ownership. So you had kings, queens, the
Mhm.
barons, and all that. And the church had a bunch of land, and in fact, the kings gave the church some because we wanted God on our side. You know,
Right.
um, Everybody did that. And so, but there was management other than the authoritarian stuff. The functional management was based on apprenticeship, learn from the master. And whether you were a blacksmith, whether you were an engineer, whether you were an architect, whether you were a medical doctor, all different professions, all different trades grew through an apprenticeship model. And that was only in the industrial age when wealth expanded to business owners, not just the landowners. Then what they found there was wealth in actually creating things to give people. And so what happened was things like the assembly line came on. Well, if you have 20 different seasoned veterans, and they each had their apprentices, and you put them all on the same assembly line, and they're all being trained in the way that their veteran is training them, you get a lumpy assembly line. So what they did was they actually made it more uniform. They took away the power. Instead of having you learn 6 things, I put you on one thing and I hire 6 people to do one thing. Now, the employees hated it. And they'd sabotage the machines. They'd do a whole bunch of stuff. And the owners didn't care. They just made them pay for it. This is where unions came from. Okay. Like we earned our way into union, stuff. And there's a lot of ways where unions protect people from people who just didn't care. So it was
Mm-hmm.
fascinating to see that dynamic occur. So one of the things that you had was the power went to the managers. They're the only ones that saw the whole picture. Each employee would only see their piece. And so what happened was the employees effectively became cogs in a system. Okay, except in the and in an if I've got consistency of inputs and consistency of outcomes, it can all work that way, even though the employees aren't very happy about it. Okay, so they push for more dollars, and the employers are making so much that they said, sure, take more dollars. But when you go into an information age,
Mm-hmm.
power shifted again. The power actually went to the individual teams of knowledge workers because that's where the work actually got done. So they were in a situation where this whole thing around management was different, and I could claim to be the boss, but now all of a sudden, they don't keep people's attention as much as they used to in that environment. But we still have this hangover over that way of management. But the truth is, it just doesn't work anymore. So instead of treating a business like a well-oiled machine, one of the things we endorse is treating it like an intelligent ecosystem. And in a well-oiled machine, the owners win and the employees are actually cogs in a system. In an ecosystem, the owners win, the clients win, the vendors win, the staff wins. Everybody has to win for an ecosystem to work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what happens is it takes a little bit more effort and a little bit more thinking, but you can come up with a much stronger model that's actually sustainable and that, well, gives you freedom. So it's interesting to see as that's been morphing, that changes how business has been going. And that's been happening slowly but surely over the last 30 or 40 years. And it got accelerated with the pandemic that happened,
Yes, yes.
because when everybody was forced to go at home, they're like, we don't have to be at work and have things. We don't have to be under the boss's thumb, right? And so all of a sudden, people are like, "Well, maybe I do have a voice after all," And while
Mhm.
individuals had less of one, collectively, the groups did have more of one. And so now there's that. It didn't cause it, but it did accelerate it from that side. So a lot more people are seeing the power
Mhm.
of people, the power of the human spirit. When you put people together in a collaborative environment, back to what you were saying before, you
Mhm.
get a lot richer results.
Yes. Oh, you do. And thank you for sharing like the whole history of that because I'm sure everyone listening learned something from that. So I want to go back to the actual leader that you're working with, and they have made that transition, maybe from the operator, from the manager, and now they're the true visionary. The
Mhm.
roles have changed. Now the relationship with their team has to change because the role has changed. So how do they gracefully step back? Um, into this new role, maybe being the visionary without letting their team feel like they're abandoned or maybe being micromanaged as they're handing everything off.
Well, it's interesting because I'm going to go with two levels of this one, and I'm going to go to the lower level first, then I'll come back to the higher level that you're
Okay.
visionary. But if you look at the lower level, what it takes to become powerful as an individual contributor is you learn how to do stuff and do it well, and you can generate a result. You know what they say? Your future is given by your results. Your results are given by your actions.
Mm-hmm.
Your actions are given by your decisions. Your decisions are given by your thinking, but your thinking is given by what you notice, your awareness. So what you find is that people who notice more, they notice nuances and things, they actually think through things and make different decisions, which allows for different actions. And quite often people that excel as individual contributors is because they're noticing more about the dynamics that are at play and they include more in them. And next thing you
Mm-hmm.
know, they're far more powerful as an individual contributor. And of course, we all know what happens to the best individual contributors. They get promoted to management. I trust Maxine. She's amazing. She just gets things done. I can count on her anytime. She's got the most trust out of anybody. I'm going to make her the
Mm-hmm.
manager. Maxine goes into the management spot and she says, well, I do know more and these people know less. And if they don't know, I'll just tell them, then they'll know. Except that's not how she grew.
Right.
The skills it takes to be a manager are the opposite of the skills it takes to be an individual contributor. This is why
Mm-hmm.
management gets stuck because they think they need to tell. And this is where micromanagement comes in. This is just a micromanagement is just a strategy people have outgrown and have no idea. They just don't realize it. What
Right.
Maxine needs to learn to do is to ask people things. And if she can encourage somebody to notice more and think it through, they'll make the decision. If she tells them what to do, then they'll credit her for what happened. They don't feel like the co-owners in this thing. If she
Mm.
actually encourages what they notice and encourages how they think that through without telling them how to think, then what happens is you get more individual contributors, just as Maxine has grown. And so, if you take a look at Maxine's boss, okay,
Mm-hmm.
or bosses, they're looking at how do I support Maxine's growth? First of all, to encourage ask as opposed to tell, because you'll get much more powerful, individual contributors that way, because they really will find their own sea legs and they'll actually grow in whichever way, based on what they notice. But the other side is if you take a look at top leaders, leaders cause other leaders. Okay. Now they talk about, leadership is about rallying people to a brighter future. And I agree with that. I believe that that's true.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not most of leadership. Most of leadership is really listening and understanding people and then supporting them where they're at and guiding them or supporting their in whatever direction really works for them. So if you were to guide me, the only way you'd be successful is to figure out where I should be or where I'm
Yeah.
really predisposed to want to be, because you know that if you get me there, it's going to be easy on you. If you put me somewhere else because you think the business needs that, all you're going to get is somebody that's either too klutzy to do it properly or resentful that you're trying to put me in some box I don't want to be in. And then you wonder why employees are disengaged. Yeah, but the business needs this, don't you know? Oh, sure,
Yeah.
let's go with that. So
Oh, it's
that's
all
what I
about,
find.
yeah, you need that. I mean, a true leader really needs to not only have the vision, they don't want to just tell people what to do. They want to identify the strengths and the weaknesses in each employee and put them in that lane where they prosper. And as a result, your company does too. I hear what you're saying because a lot of people put people in the wrong spots and then they get really frustrated that they're not performing. But it's not their fault, it's the leader's fault for putting them there. However, I would say that the person who's in that stuck place kind of needs to find their voice to at least speak up and say, maybe this isn't working. Is there something else I could do? But they would also have to have that confidence to ask that question
Well,
without being let go.
yeah, I would agree. The other half of that is literally half the job of top leaders is to find right fit employees.
Yeah,
Not
right.
everybody should be with every company.
Mm-hmm.
There are companies where you're more suited to actually be able to use the skills that you've got and to grow them, and there are companies where it just doesn't fit. Okay, and so if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. I mean,
Right. And I
you
think
know,
nothing's more frustrating than having all this talent inside, but you're in the wrong place where none of it can be recognized or used. That's just potential, just
yeah,
going to the rock bottom. And I think that is the worst case scenario for a person. So I'm just thinking about anyone who's listening right now. If you're that person and you have a lot of talent and ability, but whoever you're with right now doesn't see it or not aware of what you can bring to the table, maybe it's time for you to experience a transition and find a different place of employment where you can be valued, recognized, and pulled forth.
absolutely. And the other half of that is when I'm looking at people, um, if the person's not a fit, they're not going to do well.
They're
And
not.
it's like they're not going to be happy,
Nobody
and
is.
the people around them aren't going to be happy. So it
Hmm.
doesn't make sense. And one of the people say, yeah, but that's easy to say. Good people are hard to find. Now sometimes you just have to face reality. Well, that's true. I completely agree with that. And some jobs are really a lot harder to fill than others. I completely agree with that. And people usually make the wrong they make a mistake, they go in the wrong direction when they find that people are hard to find. So if I've got a position, I don't know, I'm just gonna make up a wage, somebody doing something, we don't know what, for $80,000 a year is the wage I'm prepared to pay, and I can't find anybody at that. So they go, well, let's see how close I can get to that. And this person's clearly not worth 80, but I'll pay them 65 or I'll pay them 70, and that's fine. And at least they're close, they can get some of the work done. Well, my suggestion would be perhaps they're going in the wrong direction. Instead of
Mhm.
looking at the best as 70 or 75, who comes close to most of the things, instead of doing that, I've got a position at 80. The question is, what could I get if I paid 85 or 90?
Mm-hmm.
Well, 90, I don't have the money for 90. But you know what? If I could attract somebody that cost me 90, that extra $10,000, quite often when I get that much stronger a person, I'm in a
Right.
situation where, you know what? I can make up that extra 10 easily, and I actually get a far stronger person. You've got wiggle room in your system now because you got people that are more accomplished. And so my attitude is you don't just stick people into roles. You really have now. This sounds like a simplistic solution to a complex problem, and let's not kid ourselves. This is a complex problem. This we've got people all over the world in all types of businesses that are dealing with these types of things. But what I do find is by looking in this direction, as opposed to getting the best that's close, you look for the best, and then you say, how much further do I have to go? And I saw one situation in somebody the equivalent of 80, and they ended up having to pay 120.
Oh
They're like,
my,
we
that's a
couldn't
big
afford that.
difference.
Yeah, that's like that was crazy. You know what?
Wow.
They did the job of three people. They're
There you
like,
go.
I
There you
can't
go.
believe we never thought of this earlier. And it was, okay, we have a term for this person. Okay. And they labeled the term. They said it was pure dumb luck that we happened to stumble into this. We'll take it every time, but it was pure dumb luck. And you know what? It was amazing because literally they did the jobs of three people.
Oh God, I love that story. It is so true. There are people out there that are, that's fantastic. I love that. Okay,
Uh-huh.
I need to know, I want to understand more about what is the difference that you help people with freedom in their business versus or same as freedom from their business.
Well, okay. So if I look at freedom in the business, we all have, if somebody starts a business,
Mm-hmm.
there's certain things they're really good at that they really enjoy. There's other things that they're strategic with that they like to see, and that people wouldn't put themselves in an ownership position if they didn't have some semblance of that. Um, and people that don't have that will work with others who do. I mean, we naturally find, our place as far as that's concerned. Or sometimes it's cooperative arrangements where you might have one set of skills, I got a different set of skills, and together we figure out, who'd cover what. But freedom in the business is doing more of the things that got you in the business. We deal a lot with service-based businesses or businesses with a strong service component, and almost all of those businesses are based in the expertise of their people, whether it's professional services, skilled trades, whatever. It takes skill and experience and expertise to do that. So quite often, and of course, we all know that expertise is nothing more or less than pattern recognition, pattern matching, and then pattern utilization. So the better I get, the more I'm seeing where the patterns fit, which goes back to the whole awareness thing. And I can see that. And so the stronger I get, if I can play in the zone where I'm actually at my best and I really feel fulfilled, I'll have a lot more freedom in my business because I get to contribute in ways that are meaningful to me. Freedom from the business is, if I build a system based on people working with complementary strengths, everybody doesn't have to do the same job. One of the mistakes people made when they're from the industrial revolution is thinking that competency frameworks are the only thing that work. Well, the reason people do that is because it really does get complex the larger the number of people you have.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you separate from having people actually focusing on results, it's easier to say, well, listen, instead of saying, are they getting this result? Because we can't measure that. You know what we're going to do instead is we're just going to say, did you tick these boxes? And so everybody has to tick the same 7 boxes to go to the next level, but not everybody's not the same. You might be good at boxes 1 through 4, and I'm good at box 5 and 6. And thank goodness we have the person who's good at box 7, because neither one of us are good at that one. And
Really?
so, but together, you see, our clients don't care how many of us have those. They care that collectively we have
Mm-hmm.
it combined between us and among us. So competency frameworks actually get in the way of that, and they actually try to start to normalize or morph us into clones of each other, as opposed to actually tapping the unique strengths that each person has, because that's the superpower that we can bring. That's the X
Right.
factor that allows us to get the unusual profits. And let's not kid
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. This is not a mom and Pollyanna thing. This is more a hard-nosed business reality. If I got people working at their top strengths, they're happier, they deliver more, and I'm way easier. I have a much easier time supporting them. Okay. I don't have to
Mm-hmm.
put anybody under my thumb because they want to do the work and because they really enjoy generating the result. So I get a lot more freedom. And as I grow this thing, if I grow it with that in mind, I get a lot more freedom from my business. I can actually have a holiday. I had to laugh because you deal with a lot of small business owners. They go, we've been in this business 10 years. Remember, honey, we used to actually go on holidays. We used to do this and that. We don't seem to do that stuff anymore. It's been like several years since we've taken more than a long weekend, and I don't know that we've ever left the phone behind. So, and in fact, within a year or so, we actually get people back to taking holidays. My attitude is, unless you're taking a bunch of time off, and by the way, anybody can take time off and earn less. That's called part-time. That's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
Okay.
Whole different scenario. Whole different
Absolutely.
scenario.
And it was in 1998 that I discovered that I started taking, like in 1996, I had been 3 years without taking any time off. Okay, three
That
years
is
since I,
really, that leads me to something that I found here on your website. Time off and self-care are critical ingredients of an effective growth strategy. A clear mind comes from rest. It doesn't come from getting more done.
absolutely. In fact, if you ask anybody who runs marathons,
Hmm.
they'll tell you if you run 7 days a week, you will fail at the marathon.
I believe that. Your body has to rest, recover. You have to recover.
That, in fact, that's the growth in a muscle is in the recovery, not in the use.
Hmm.
So same with us. I started taking, what I noticed is that, teachers get 12 weeks off. In 1998, I was wandering along a beach listening to something or other. At the time it was cassette decks and stuff.
Oh, I
I'd started
remember.
my business in 95, right? And so, I was just sitting there listening away and I'm thinking, teachers get 12 weeks off. They get 9 weeks in the summer, they get 2 weeks of Christmas, they get a week at spring break. That's 12 weeks. Now, if I had 9 weeks off in the summer, I probably wouldn't have clients to come back to. So that's not a good idea for me.
Right. That's a little
But you
too
know
much.
what? I could take the last week of the month off and not, if I see people on Thursday and Friday and then again on me, a week later on Monday, Tuesday, no problem. And during the last week of the month, from a sales perspective, they're trying to hit their numbers. So, with the size of clients that I had, so this wasn't a big deal. So I started taking off a week every month. And then eventually I said, well, hang on a second. If I can work 3 weeks in a 4 week month, why can't I work 3 weeks in a 5 week month? Because there's 52 weeks, not 48 in a year. So I thought, well, we got to pick those up. So routinely I've been doing 16 to 18 weeks off a year. And, every year I've done it, the income's quietly grown and it's made a bigger difference. And I'm just fresh, you know,
Yes.
because when you come back, you actually have it. The ideas that you've been plaguing you for 3 days, you come back and in 10 minutes, you're like, yeah, we're not doing that. We're doing this, this, and this. This will work better
Hmm.
for everybody. And they're like, what a great idea.
You
I'm
got to
like,
have time to think. You have to have time to
oh,
reflect because you can never change something that you're not reflecting on.
correct. And so you could even call time off or time away. And for me, if I wasn't taking time away, it was almost impossible to take it off because clients would find me and I'd let them. Whereas if I'm away, you know what? Well, I'm not here, and they understand he's not here. When he gets back, fine, we can talk to him then. And so it literally had to be time away. And sometimes it was with my family. Sometimes I was off on a conference or doing something here or there. Sometimes I
Hmm.
was just doing planning for the next year, something, anything that was not client related. Every now and then I'd do the odd thing for business, but not like I wrote books during that time. My three books that I've written have all been written based on the time away that I had.
Oh,
You know,
that's great. That's
yeah,
great. You're inspiring me. I have a second book in me, and I was like, I've got to find the time to get this done. So I think I need to schedule some time away. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
love that.
I love this other thing that I found on your website. And since we're talking about freedom, freedom by design, you share that freedom is not a selfish act.
It is.
I,
Okay, listen. First, put your own mask on, then take care of others. If you know what, you will get a dishonorable discharge if you give up part of your uniform in the US military out of some well intended, misguided attempt to save your neighbor. Your job is to take care of yourself because you can't save your platoon if you put yourself in a weakened state.
well,
And I
that's,
got to tell
well,
you, in
yeah.
the military, it's life and death. I mean, and they don't mess around. So, and
Hmm.
they're pretty severe on that stuff. Even, and we hear it every single time we take a flight. So the truth is, you need to take care of yourself. So you want to call it selfish, like a bad thing, or do you just want to call it self-care so that I'm available to everybody else?
That's good.
I don't
That's
care what you call it. Here's what I know is when I'm fresh, everybody else around me gets supported better. When I'm not fresh, it's not so good.
Well, you got to go fill yourself up so you have something to pour out, right? Otherwise, it's just the
Absolutely.
same old, it's stale, it's stagnant, and we need to step away so we can actually see the problems differently. If we're in it too much, we really don't get the clarity that we need. So let me ask you about the person that you are transitioned, this leader that you have. When do they realize that they want freedom from their business? Is there a season in life for a man? Is it in their 40s, their 50s? I know there's every decade there's a significant transition in a man's life and in a woman's life. In fact, I do specific coaching for women 60s and beyond because it's all about legacy. It's about convergence. It's about, who am I in this season of life? So, when you're working with leaders, do you find there's a significant stage in a man's life where they're saying, okay, it's not maybe about all the money right now. Maybe the priority is a shift for the freedom. Like, is there a season? Because I'm thinking of those who are listening, wondering if maybe like they are thinking that way, or maybe they're thinking too soon, or maybe they've missed their timing.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because it used to be that we'd work from 20 to 40 and then we'd
Hmm.
actually benefit, in higher positions and things based on, from 40 to 60 is where we'd accumulate our wealth that based on all the skills that we learned between
Hmm.
20 and 40. And then 60-ish or shortly thereafter, we'd actually retire and do different things. It seems like that curve has shifted. It's now 20 to 50 and then 50 to 70 in terms of the accumulation, and then 70 and onwards is when that occurs. That said, here's what I have noticed over time. Um, a young man between age 38 and 45 is quite often when they feel like they're accomplished enough that they start to get unsettled. And, people talk about the midlife crisis and the red
Right.
Corvette Stingray and all the other things that everybody talks about during that time. Really, what's happening is if I'm all about building my wealth and my perceived status and in society and in my business, in my career, all those things, um, and what you find is more of the same doesn't give you more of that. So what
Hmm.
happens is they try to change things up, and next thing you know, they're undoing things that actually do work, um, and they try to redo it again. And this is where you do see a lot of. This is where you get this thing called the midlife crisis. This is where people really go through a level of turmoil, and what I've found with that is if you had to get to the core of that, the biggest thing that I found is that they're busy doing things to take care of themselves. Where the switch occurs, if you want to talk about transitions, the people
Right.
that actually either sail right through that or people that shift after they've confronted or faced that is people that realize that they're fine the way they are. They've got the money that they need. They know they're never, as long as they're healthy, they'll never have a problem. So take care of their health. But the other side of it is now it's available. And I'm not saying people should wait for this. And many people are smart enough not to wait till that time of year or that time of season in their life. But if they shift to giving to others, there's a level of fulfillment that occurs. You see,
Mhm.
after I've got everything that I need for me, growth is no longer about my status or anything about me in some sort of pecking order. It's about others. And the only reason to grow after you've sort of gone through that is to contribute. It's the only reason to grow.
Mhm.
Okay, otherwise there's no need to grow. And so if people are stuck without the growth and contribution phase, they're in a situation where they really struggle. Um,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it's interesting because with different people and different family setups, sometimes it's about that. Others, it's about they've always been contributing to others. I mean, I've seen this with parents with children, and the children grow and they move on, to the next phase of their lives. And there's this sort of, the whole empty nest thing starts to
Right.
become a
That's a big
factor.
one. That's a
It's
big one.
huge. And it's
Mhm.
because they've been using one conduit for contribution. And it's really been fulfilling because, nothing like your child's smile at Christmas time when you get just the right thing for them that they did not expect and absolutely love, or on their birthday or on some other special occasion that you surprise them. I mean, we all get that level of gratification from our children, right? And well,
Mhm.
not all, but hopefully most, if
Well,
if
yeah, I
and
know
so
I
and
have.
so
Mhm.
sure. And but if that's taken away, all of us, and if we've tied our identity to that as a mechanism for us to actually feel full and feel whole and feel emotionally great, and that's kind of stripped away, there's this shudder that occurs there too. That's another time in a parent's life where I find that where that can happen. And so again, it's different with different people, but it's interesting to see those dynamics, and those are actually really interesting transition points in people's lives.
They are. And, some transitions take us by surprise, like the
Hmm.
ones mainly like the transitions of loss of a loved one, your health,
Hmm.
these are like you're blindsided. But these other transitions, eventually your kids are going to grow and transition on their own. Like I always try to tell moms, it's your children's season to transition into their purpose, and you can't hold them back. You have to let them go because it's their time. So it's like a double transition in the family. The kids are going through one because now they're off to college or whatever. Everything is new and different for them. More maturity, responsibility that they have to learn. And now the mother becomes more like the mentor
Hmm.
than the mother. And it's really hard letting go of that role where it's like the leadership, they had control. Well, the mother and the father had more control. And now you're losing control. So now what do you do? Who are you now without that control? And how can you flip it around to where you're still impactful, but you're not controlling? And boy,
Well,
and I'm sure that's the same thing with leaders. Once they step back, let go of control. And now they're in a new identity role themselves. They don't have that firefighting passion of the problem solver anymore because now they've equipped others to do it. I'm sure they feel a little empty, feel a little less defined.
well, it's interesting that you're saying who they are and what they feel less defined and things like that. One of the things that I find is as somebody's in a business for a long time, quite often they'll plateau at a certain level. And when they
Mhm.
plateau and they just can't get to the next level, like they don't understand it. They do the best they can. It's not like there's anything wrong with them. They very successful business. It might be, 5, 6, 8 million. I've seen companies sit there. There's a lot that get stuck between 3 and 5 million, but there's also a lot that get stuck with all different, between 2 and 10, frankly. But what you find is that they've gotten to the point where they're surviving at that level. And the
Yeah.
skills it takes to survive
Mhm.
are very different than the skills it takes to thrive at a whole different level. But I got to tell you, if I get an adrenaline rush from that sale, because I really feel like I'm making a difference, but I also won because I got the deal, right? And things like
Mhm.
that. You're in a situation where that dynamic is there. Well, we start to identify with that, and it's part of our identity beliefs. And the truth is that we will never act inconsistent with how we perceive ourselves to be. So, or said differently, with our identity beliefs. So if I see that that's part of who I am, I just won't interact differently. We actually had a woman, she had been with the company 17 years. It was a printing house, and she was an inside customer service rep. And there was 15 salespeople. She personally was the assistant to the top two people, and she personally sold more than the whole bottom half of the sales force
Oh my
herself.
word. Oh
Okay.
wow.
And so they
Okay.
said, you know what? She's doing so well. We should give her, a little bit of a commission on top of what she's got. And so they said, we're going to give you this commission on top of what we got. And she said, can I think about it? And
Really?
they're like, so you're going to think about whether to take more money for doing the same stuff?
Oh my
She
God.
said, if I could. So they said, sure. This was a Thursday. The next Monday she came in, resignation.
What happened?
I'm not a salesperson. I am not a salesperson. I help people with things. I am not a salesperson. You want to make me a salesperson? No. They
I
said, well, what
get
if we don't
that.
make you a salesperson? Well, can I have my old job back or do I have to leave? Because I've been here 17 years. I do not want to leave, but I'm not going to be a salesperson because, salespeople, they're whatever salespeople are, don't you know? I just help people with things. And so they actually literally had to take back the commission arrangement. They made her back into the same role. And then what they quietly did was they gave her a Christmas bonus that sort of topped her up a little bit, but not enough to actually have her be considered a salesperson because she is not one of those. Now, if somebody will actually walk away from money because it's inconsistent with who they are, don't kid
Mhm.
yourself. It goes through all of us. We will not operate inconsistent with our identity, who we see ourselves to be when we look in the mirror when nobody else is there.
Our
That's who we
core
believe ourselves
values.
to be. Yeah.
Our core values.
And so you're in a situation where, a lot of times when you're talking transitions, I am a wonderful, caring, loving parent. If that's who I am in life, and then I don't have children at home, I pretty much just got gutted.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's devastating.
And it happens in businesses as well. That's why business owners will stay there and they say, well, they micromanage, they do this. Well, they claim they want to grow, but really they need the adrenaline rush from the sales. They need to know that they have personal hands-on touch with the customers because that's where they got the fulfillment in their business. It happens to all. And I got to tell you, it's really, really hard. This is part of being human. That's kind of the messy part, Well, it's one of the mess. We have a lot of messy parts as
No,
humans.
I
That's
always
part of
call it the messy middle, the transition bridge. It's the messy middle where all
there
this
you
stuff
go.
happens. So,
Yeah.
okay, so that it's so true. So they can't let go. So how do you help them understand that if they get to the other side, there's another source of fulfillment. There's another way to get fulfilled. How do you get them to transition?
Well, just like we do when we talk about the emotions survive, thrive, connect, and adapt, you talk about what it's like to be in the shoes that they're in. And you
Mm-hmm.
really just sit down with somebody and you say, what is it that you really do want? And if they understand that these dynamics are at play, then it's like, that's why I need to hang on to it. Yeah, it's like, okay, so I'll tell you what, we'll start just by slowing down before you jump into that step. And then you start, you quietly just support people to sort of test out different behaviors that will allow them to emerge into who they want to be without getting caught by the triggers that we all have as normal humans. This isn't psychology, this is quiet, normal human behavior. And you know what? I will always get a tennis coach if I'm playing tennis because if
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the ball, I can't see whether my foot goes across the line. Well, in business, you got people that are keeping an eye on certain things. Okay, did you see how you jumped in? Yeah, I did. I jumped in on that one again. Okay, great. So did you want to clean it up with the? Yeah, I already apologized. Okay. So what do you think we might do next time when you feel that coming up? We deep breaths, all the normal stuff, right?
Yeah,
And it's
all
like,
the
and
little
then you
techniques.
you catch yourself just after, and then eventually you catch yourself during, and pretty soon you catch yourself beforehand. And what happens is you start to relax because you realize that there is another side. You don't like cease to exist on the other side of it. I mean, all our fears are fascinating. They drive us crazy, but they're fascinating. And if you can just sort of test and try different things, what happens is the level of calm that comes, people actually really, really cherish people who can quietly be present with them and just allow them to be themselves. And the more somebody discovers that side instead of being the hero, what happens is they just flip one for the other. Eventually one dissipates and the other one just emerges. It just takes practice like anything. I mean, I will never be a good piano player if I did not practice.
Oh,
And
yeah,
you know
there
what?
you go.
So it's the same with everything in life, every behavior, every habit, everything that we have, and it's quiet sort of transitions. And it doesn't mean you have to do a full brain makeover or anything. Um, you're in a situation where you just take life one step at a time. You notice that people are in survival and they all want to thrive. And I just need to know which is at play. I know that people want to connect and I'm going to quietly encourage that. I don't want to push anybody into anything because I wouldn't want to be pushed into anything. So you just treat other people like you'd want to be treated yourself. And, it's amazing how little basic rules that we all learned in catechism, will actually survive us. And it's not, because of some deity, it's because they make sense. They
It's
just
true.
make sense.
Basics, the
Treat people
basics.
nice, they like you more.
Yes, the golden rule, the golden rule. That's
That's
what it
right.
was.
Yeah.
If people are just willing to learn,
Hmm.
willing to listen to their own mindset, oh, I've always been this way, so this is who I am. Well, that's a wrong mindset. Or just, if they're limited in their thinking, if you can help people change that and expand the way they think, oh, the fulfillment that comes, the flexibility and joy that you talk about in your book, just the joy of life that you don't experience if you keep drinking from the same fountain and keep doing the same things over and over. Transitions are probably the most powerful thing you can experience in life if you learn to embrace them
Mhm.
navigate through them, and allow it to transform you. It's powerful. In fact, that's the purpose of them.
Well, the other side of that is that they're actually not as hard or scary as people fear.
Right.
You
Well,
know,
it's
if you've
the
got somebody
fear.
by your
Hmm.
side that can quietly say, I mean, listen, when we were 3 years old, mom was there and said, or dad was there just saying, just take one step. That monkey bar is not that high. Don't worry, I'm here. And if you fall, I'll catch you. And it's like, oh, I did it. And then you do the next one, and pretty soon they're scampering to the top. You're like, okay, that's a little far. Come on, right? But the truth is, sometimes they just need a little bit of encouragement. Same
Yeah.
with business owners, same with all of us, like in every role we have. So it's not like people need to be treated as children. We all need to be given the room to quietly grow. And if we're willing to grow a little bit, it actually is far less onerous and it's far less worrisome and scary than we fear. And it just takes a little bit more than we're doing.
You know what I believe too, and everything that you're saying, it's like drinking water. You don't like to drink water, but once you start drinking it, your body desires it and you kind of start liking to drink water. It's the same with growth. Once you experience the excitement, the refreshing feeling that you get, that you experience something new, you learn something new, you want more. And it's all about just believing in yourself to take the next step or allowing someone to speak into your life to say, hey, you should try this. Why don't you come over here and try that and
Hmm.
try
You know,
something different?
I love what you're saying because one of the biggest things that it takes to generate that is trust.
Yes,
And so
yes.
we're in, like we do a lot with people in trades, and sometimes you get some roughnecks in there, and people that are
Mhm.
really rough and tough, and they do the hard jobs that the rest of us can. I mean, I read about muscles once. There's none here. It's like I don't
So I
I mean,
wear long sleeves.
I'm okay with a calculator. That's about as muscular as I get, right? But these guys, like they do the real heavy lifting in life, and they are rough and tough,
Right.
okay?
Oh,
But
yeah,
the
they
other side of
are.
it is, one of the things we did, the juniors that they have, okay, are a little bit afraid of the seniors because the seniors figure that's just how it's going to be. So one of the things we did was we said, I'll tell you what, here's what we're going to do. I know you're committed to growing this person for the next 2 weeks. Every day, I just want you to make a note, and they didn't. Nobody writes down in this thing, right? So they get their phones out and they make a note in their phone. Fine, no problem. And so every day they notice one or two things that actually went well with this person. And they said, well, what about
Excellent.
the stuff that doesn't go well? I said, well, if something doesn't go well, do you tell them right on the spot? We have to fix it. Okay, great. Then you don't need to remind them again. Oh, yeah, I guess you're right. Okay. So just click the good thing. And it was interesting because with one guy, he said, so at the end of the week, okay, you let the junior drive instead of you. So you're looking at your phone while you're on your way back to the shop or whatever, because sometimes these are in two-man crews. And they said, so I got a little bit of feedback from some of the stuff that I noticed this week. And the kid behind the wheel is like, okay. Like, yeah, this is not going to be good. I mean, I know this isn't going to be good. He said, well, I noticed that on Monday you were doing this, and I really liked the speed that you took on this front part. Now, you struggled a little bit on the second, but you know what? You figured that out too. But I got to tell you, I really loved the energy you brought to that first one. And I saw that energy again on Wednesday, except you brought it to far more of the work that we were doing on that one. And the other thing is, I saw that on Thursday, when you were looking at that, we were on that news site and you were looking at this issue and it was really a problematic one, but you stopped and you took 10 minutes and you just thought it through. And that 10 minutes you took probably saved us about an hour and a half on that site. I love that you actually stopped to do that. I got to tell you, overall, my feedback is you actually had a really strong week.
That's
And the kid's
wow.
like, okay, where's the
Who,
but?
me?
He said,
Who,
no
me?
buts. We've already talked about the stuff that didn't work. We dealt with them as they go. Here's what I found that he did that for 3 or 4 weeks. By week 4, the kid was asking the senior, well, what do you think about we do in this situation? When he started to trust him enough to start asking questions and
Oh,
getting more
good.
information, the growth just accelerated because all he did was he just stopped and started noticing the good stuff. And so the youngster, 10 years younger,
Right.
or 15 years in some cases, but they started to trust their seniors.
I could
And so we
see
had
that.
one guy tested it, then we had another guy test it for a month, and by month 3, everybody wanted to try it. But it took till month 3 because nobody trusted it.
Oh,
Like even
really?
the seniors are like, yeah, this is a bunch of BS. We're not doing that stuff. Blah blah blah. It's like whatever. But by the third month, they were all trying it, and they were amazed at the impact that it had. And it was interesting because their whole attitude towards their team and each other, and them versus the office. There was an us them with the office. That all disappeared because what happened was things were going so well, and they were given the support to actually have this stuff go well. It was amazing to see the metamorphosis that happened in
Yes.
out in the field where the tough work is happening.
Well, everything that you just shared to me comes down to the power of our words. We're either going to speak life or we're going to speak something negative over someone. And so
Sure,
just hearing what the seniors said to the juniors that whole week, the junior knew that he was being recognized and validated. He was actually being watched. And what he was doing was good. Everything spoken over him was affirmation, even though some of the mistakes had to be recognized, but there was
sure.
more affirmation that counters the negative. And you can't help but rise up from that. Everybody wants to come forth. Everybody wants to share after that. And the relationship that's built because of that trust factor. I mean, it's just so powerful. You can't go wrong when you use the right kind of words, encouragement, the power of our words. It'll take you everywhere in life, I feel.
Now, so I have two comments about that. So the first
Okay.
comment is I completely agree with absolutely everything you say.
Uh-oh, but something's coming next. Go ahead. I'm ready.
And if I said what you said to these guys, that's a bunch of crap. Just treat people good. Okay, we'll go with treat people good. That's what we got. Because that's their lingo for the exact same thing. Treat them good. Okay.
Get it. Oh yeah, you got
But you know
to
what?
meet
Treat
people
people
where
good.
they're
They can
at.
hear. They can hear it. That,
Yeah, you
right?
meet them where they're at. You
No
meet them where they're
question,
at.
no question. So we read all these things that are so eloquent and things like
Oh,
that, and then you wonder why people, because you, like you say, you interact with people where they're at, and you know what? If where you're at is treat people good, and let's not kid ourselves. These are some of the most talented men I've ever had the privilege of working with. These guys
yes,
are
yes.
nobody's slave. It's not like somebody's dumb. Whether you have access to articulate words or not is just one form of intellect. The stuff that these guys manage, okay, makes me
Mm-hmm.
shudder. It's amazing the results that they can generate. These guys they're as sharp as a whip, and the level of depth that they bring to situations is amazing. And you just have to learn their language.
You do. So I'll tell a quick story about my husband. So
Cool.
he does oil and gas,
Okay.
and he has the workers that are out in the field, the tough guys, the rough guys, they're doing all the hard work.
Yep.
And he really believed, in when he acquired this group, he wanted to treat them just like everybody else, all the executives. So he said, all the guys in the field, they're coming to our Christmas party. And they were never invited before. And so
Okay.
he invited all the guys, bring your wives. He even paid for hotels for them to stay in so they didn't have to drive all the way back. And we would get to the party, and I'll never forget this, Michael. We were walking around, and my husband was just talking to everybody. He never said who he was, never once said he was the CEO. He just talked and thanked them for their hard work and everything that they were doing. And at the end of the night, when someone introduced my husband to get up and speak, and they were all like, "You're the CEO?" And they were like so taken back that they were treated with such honor and respect. It was so beautiful. Um,
Absolutely.
I just think, it's not about who you are, it's about how you treat people.
Yeah.
And
It's
these
just
guys
people working with
love my
people.
husband. They love
Yeah.
him, and they'll work extra because they know they're respected and honored.
Well, it's interesting. We have one guy. He grew his business from 10 million to, I think last year they did 70. Um,
Wow,
and
that's
and
awesome.
and we're talking about people that will energize subdivisions and actually lay electrical wire, and they'll do the work, the drilling work to actually put up the big street lights and all that, but along
Oh,
highways
yeah.
and stuff like that. So big stuff, right? $40 million contracts onwards. And they tease him because he's the guy that brings donuts to the site. So he gets a whole pile of donuts. He goes out to the site, and they got. I mean, we're talking the guys with the real Tonka trucks, right? The big ones, the
Yeah.
real guys.
Oh,
And these
yeah.
are the guys that play with the Tonka trucks, but the ones in real life. And he's the donut guy. Yeah, we'll let him stay. The donuts any good today? Yeah, okay, donuts are good. Sure, come on in. You can stay. And so and he'll notice this or that or whatever. And he watches how people are and stuff. But he doesn't sit there spying on people. But he's the donut guy. And you know what? They let him be the donut guy. And you know what? It allows to break down walls and just listen. It's people working with people to get a job done together. That's really what we're doing.
Right, right. I agree. Oh my gosh. I have loved this conversation. I could just go on and on because you have so much to share, but I know we have to eventually bring it to a close. So, from your perspective, considering those who are listening right now, what would be any advice or wisdom? You've shared so much, but I'm sure got something inside your heart that you would love to share with the audience.
You know, at the end of the day, the thing that I would have to share is at the end of the day, it's all about people and relationships.
Yes.
If we can support each other, we're in a situation where, you know what, together we really are stronger. We can do way more when we work together. And if there's mutual respect there and you're good at one thing and I'm good at something else, why don't I just let you be good at what you're good at and you let me be good at what I'm good at, and together we come up with something that's really cool. And so the relationships really do, just like they do with a child as he or she grows, the relationships that we have with each other are the very thing that keeps a business together. It keeps it sustainable. It allows for value to be created for the clients. It allows for profit to be created. It allows for people's professional growth to occur within the organization. Like, so much is available if you just notice and focus on the relationships.
I totally agree. At the end of the day, it's all about how we make people feel. That's the
Yep.
last thing, right?
Yep.
That's the last thing. So, Michael, I can just imagine so many people would love to reach out and work with you. It sounds like you have tremendous success and also helping people scale their businesses. So, what would be the best way for someone to connect with you?
Well, you could look us up on our website, walshbusinessgrowth.com. You go to Amazon and you look at any of the books from Michael Walsh. There's a few of them. Thankfully, it's no longer one book, even two. We've actually got three there now. The latest one is, like you mentioned earlier, Freedom by Design. And so you type in Freedom by Design, Michael Walsh, you'll find me. Or, Google it. We're around.
What are the other two book titles?
The first one is Business by Design. Okay, and that was how to get to your first million. And the
Okay.
second one is Thinking Big is Not Enough. And that was the story of the first half of a woman's uh, journey. She had approached me when she was at 400,000 pounds. It was in the UK, which is about 600,000 US dollars at the time. And she was halfway through that journey. 3.5 years later, she'd gotten to 2 million within 3.5 years from 400,000. And in the next 4 years, we got her to 7.3 million. And that's when she put a bow on it and sold it. The thing that I find interesting about that particular story is she was 52 when we started it. And she
Wow.
spent 10 years bouncing around, between 250 and 400,000 pounds. And it was interesting because her goal was to get to 1 million pounds. Got to get to 1 million pounds. Whether it's in US, got to get to 1 million US dollar. Canada, got to get to 1 million Canadian dollar. Everybody's all about the million. And in fact, we were in our second year working together, and she was clear that she wanted to hit 1 million pounds. And I said, I'm sorry, Louise, that is no longer an appropriate goal. And she said, well, why not? I said, because you're already at 1.4.
Oh, I
She said,
love
I
it.
know I've been waiting for my financials. Really, we are? I said, yeah. And she says, huh. And it was a problem for her because she couldn't figure out now what she could go for. So instead of worrying about a financial goal, we said, you know what, why don't we create this as a place where really people can learn and grow and prosper? And so what she did was she started focusing on the prosperity of her managers so that they could grow professionally. And it was through a commitment to their growth that she actually literally brought this thing eventually to 7.3 million pounds, which is about 10 and a half million. So she went from 600,000 US equivalent to about 10 and a half million US equivalent in 8 years.
And she did it by focusing on the growth of others and the
The
money
growth of the
followed.
people, absolutely. Once she got past her million,
Yeah.
and but because guess what? If I've got really cool people and they grow, guess what happens to the company?
It has to grow. Well done. Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna have to think about which one of those books I like because they're all really good, really good. And they're all about freedom and growth. So Hey, Michael, thank you so much for being here with us today on the Transition Bridge podcast. And I just want to say, hey, thanks to the Transition Tribe. You come in each and every week, you hear a story that inspires growth. It inspires and helps you understand more about the purpose and the power of the transitions in our lives. And as you can hear today, there was all kinds of transitions, whether it's in your business, financially, or you personally finding freedom, the joy and the flexibility that's there for you in life. And so, growth is an option. And I hope that you do choose growth today, that you can really realize the benefits of growth. You're going to be happier, you're going to be more fulfilled, and you're going to find yourself doing something you've never done before and wondered why it has taken you so long. Just choose growth. It's the best thing you could ever do. And again, Michael, thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you.